have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, we've been telling you about Brunei and their institution of Sharia law, which will include death by stoning for gay people. But we're going to tell you how the world is responding to this.
We're also going to give you lots of same-sex marriage news updates from around the United States.
A prominent gay religious leader and his husband are divorcing after 25 years together.
Anti-gay leader Maggie Gallagher admits that she and her colleagues have failed so far in the marriage fight.
Not giving up. Shocking revelations about the health commissioner of Pasadena, California.
And the first trial of two men accused of homosexual acts in Uganda has opened.
Some progress in the U.S. on the decriminalization of people with HIV who have sex, while things get worse in Canada.
The lesbian-themed play, Fun Home, has begun raking in a lot of awards.
And in the last flurry of reviews for this season, I'm going to review Alan Cumming in Cabaret, Stephen Spinella and Estelle Parsons in a play that closed but may be coming to you. Here Lies Love about the Marcoses in the Philippines and a revival of The Rivals. I just wanted to say revival of The Rivals.
And for those of you familiar with the cable show Billy on the Street, I'm going to compliment him on a very subversive segment he did this past week.
So very disturbing about what's going on in Brunei with the institution gradually, but of Sharia law. This is a very oil-rich nation on the island of Borneo that has, as one television commentator said, fewer people than Staten Island.
About 420, 30, 40,000 people,
But
the whole nation.
If the Sultan has his way, there'll be a lot fewer because they're going to start stoning gay people,
people who have
adulterers.
Yes. People will lose limbs.
People who blaspheme. Well, we just got a lot of stuff. It's no joke. This is outrageous. But it has sparked some worldwide outrage.
Yes.
The United States has been a little, easy on this. So we have concerns because it's an oil-rich nation and they're not taking this guy on.
That's true of a number of countries in the world. Brunei, with under 500,000 people, does seem to have a lot of power because of their economic leverage. And so the people in political power tend not to object as loudly, but people outside of political power are doing more.
I mean, the Sultan has $20 billion. He's part of the British Commonwealth. They invited him to the wedding of Kate and William last year, I guess it was, or 2 years ago, was it? I forget anyway.
And according to John Oliver on his new show on HBO, the Sultan of Brunei showed up uninvited at the last G20 meeting.
But this stuff is horrendous. And so how can we fight back? Well, it turns out that the Brunei Investment Group, which gives him his $20 billion, owns this Dorchester hotels all across the world. There are 2 in London, there are a couple in California, including the Beverly Hills Hotel.
And the Bel Air.
Yeah, so there was a protest there, a celebrity-studded protest there, and we do have a video report on that if it is ready. Is it?
New at 5, a growing boycott against the Beverly Hills Hotel and its owner, the Sultan of Brunei, whose Muslim country is imposing tough new Sharia laws targeting gays and women. Hollywood is leading the way in this boycott. Eyewitness News reporter Giovanna Lara talked to protesters. She joins us live from Beverly Hills.
A passionate and celebrity-backed protest against a Beverly Hills landmark.
Nobody is going to set foot in that damn hotel until he is out of it.
Demonstrators urging a boycott of the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Bel Air Hotel, and other Dorchester Collection properties because of their ties to the Sultan of Brunei.
The Sultan of Brunei is a bully and a coward. You're looking at us here. We can love each other here, but in 2 days, if we were in Brunei, they would execute the two of us by stoning.
The protest comes in the wake of the country's new Islamic Sharia criminal law put into place by the Sultan, seen here with President Obama. The law is calling for punishing adultery, abortions, and same-sex relationships with flogging and stoning.
The price of having a free society is indeed eternal vigilance.
Among the protesters today, longtime women's rights activist Mavis Leno and her husband, comedian Jay Leno.
We hope maybe draw attention to this and people go, okay, maybe I won't hold my event there until they change this. I mean, we have the economic pressure to apply. Nobody's talking about burning anything down. Nobody's talking about destroying anything. You're just making people aware.
The Lenos are among a growing list of Hollywood elite, organizations, and individuals refusing to do business with hotels owned by the Sultan. The Beverly Hills Hotel confirms 9 event cancellations so far, including the Motion Picture and Television Fund's annual Night Before the Oscars party that's been held at the hotel for the last 12 years.
Everyone has the right to protest in a free country like here in Great Britain, so they have the absolute. All I can say is that targeting the Beverly Hills Hotel is misdirected.
Dorchester Collection Properties CEO Christopher Caudray declined to comment on the implementation of the Sultan's new laws, but said a boycott against their hotels will only hurt hotel staff.
We have a very strict code of conduct, and that code provides for absolute equality and respect for everyone who works in our organization.
Now, tomorrow night, the Beverly Hills City Council will vote on a resolution that decries the new laws in Brunei and urges the Sultan to divest himself from all interest in the Beverly Hills Hotel. We're live in Beverly Hills. Giovanna Lotta, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Now, I know, workers can be collateral damage in a protest, although I'd love to see what the wage scale is for your lowest paid workers there at the Beverly Hills Hotel. But this guy could not bring himself, this representative of Dorchester Hotels, could not bring himself to condemn these laws. He said, I have no comment on that. That is outrageous.
Well, it's the common formula. You do a boycott to send a message to the bad guy. And in this case, our target of availability is the local hotels that are sending their profits to him.
And the city council there has a resolution condemning Brunei over this, and
So Richard Branson has announced he's boycotting the hotels all over the world.
Feminist Majority Foundation pulled their Global Women's Rights Awards from there, and they're moving it to the Hammer Museum in Westwood. There is a worry here that now that Brunei has done this, that Sharia law could now spread to Malaysia and Indonesia.
They're on the verge of it, and they certainly have very anti-gay laws already, just on their own. And certainly the laws that we've seen passed in Africa and Uganda and Nigeria and elsewhere are heavily influenced by the desire to have Sharia law or some version of it in those places. So they're getting it from both sides. They're getting it both from the fundamentalist Muslims who want Sharia law and the fundamentalist Christians who are going over to these countries from the U.S. to promote the passage of these laws. But the Brunei laws are getting a lot of attention. And Peter Tatchell, the gay activist in London, did a demonstration outside the Brunei outside a meeting that's happening there, the business forum, about Uganda and about Brunei should be suspended from the British Commonwealth, which it is still a part of, even though it's no longer a British protectorate. All right, let's go back to this country and marriage updates.
Yes. Well, where do we start? I mean, there's so much.
We can start in Arkansas, where the Attorney General, Dustin McDaniel, a Democrat, has announced he's the first statewide elected official to announce that he supports same-sex marriage. But unlike attorney generals in some other states, he will defend the anti-marriage law there.
I wonder how the right wing feels about that. Another Confederate fighting for their side.
Well, he's a Democrat, so
I'm
I
just
think,
saying.
Yes.
You know, in New York,
the judge has announced that she will decide on this by the end of this week, so there may be a decision by the time you see
people
this.
forget in New York, our own Attorney General, Eliot Spitzer, who was eventually became governor and eventually became Client 9 in a prostitution scandal, but he said he supported same-sex marriage long before the case came up, but he defended the state law and won and delayed same-sex marriage in New York for 6 years now. It's a very different time now in the legal landscape, though, and we're winning all these cases.
And in fact, more than 50 lawyers in Wyoming have announced that they are in support of a suit for marriage rights for same-sex couples.
In Idaho, a federal magistrate there will hear the case versus the state ban on same-sex marriage on Monday. Governor Butch Otter is defending the law.
But good news from Idaho on a story we told you about last week where a woman wanted to be buried with her late wife. One of them was a veteran, so they wanted to be buried in a veteran cemetery, and that would be fine in a federal cemetery, but the state cemetery, veteran cemetery, didn't want to let them do it. So an Idaho vet, a straight man, read about the story and was so moved by it and said, you know, she's served her country, she's put in all this time, the least she should be able to do is be buried with her spouse.
Right.
So he donated his plot to them to be buried together.
I hope the government will allow that to move forward.
I hope so too.
Yes. In North Carolina, in Orange County, a guy named Mark Chilton won an election for Commissioner of Deeds, not something we usually talk about here on Gay USA, but he pledged to register same-sex marriages, calling the state ban clearly contrary to the federal constitution. He could face misdemeanor charges or be removed from office, but he said he believes that if they tried that, he would ultimately be found not guilty.
Well, just as the church in North Carolina is, the liberal churches are challenging the North Carolina law too. And of course, Clay Aiken is running for Congress in North Carolina and is inches ahead in his primary, awaiting the final vote totals, and whether, even if he wins, he has enough to avoid a runoff.
But the Republican who turned out to be a drag queen lost.
Yes, exactly.
There was a guy there.
That was a different race.
Who was an anti-gay Republican who turned out to have passed as a drag queen, but he said he found Jesus and he was no longer doing that.
And he was no longer gay. Also in North Carolina, a lesbian who's in the Army has been denied in-state tuition at the University of North Carolina. Her wife...
I think it's Fayetteville State University.
Okay. I thought it was part of the UNC system, but whatever. Her wife lives in North Carolina. She's from Virginia originally, and she hasn't been in North Carolina long enough to establish state residency.
Right.
But as a spouse and as an Army member, she applied for in-state tuition, and North Carolina said that they would not recognize the marriage and therefore not give her in-state tuition.
And I'm not sure where, but I read in the context of this story that some colleges in other states that do not have same-sex marriage have allowed this to happen.
The federal government requires equal treatment of spouses of either gender in this context, but the state is fighting this. In Texas, they have recognized same-sex spouses for these purposes. In Tennessee, not so much. Also in Tennessee, the Equality Project there is preparing couples to get married fast if a small window of opportunity opens, as, for instance, did in Utah.
Very important to people. In Pennsylvania, an anti-gay Republican, Darrell Metcalfe, held a hearing on impeaching the Attorney General, Kathleen Kane, because she will not defend the state ban on same-sex marriage. Kane was not invited to the hearing, nor were witnesses allowed to defend her. The Democrats walked out.
Yeah. The United Methodist Church is considering giving benefits to same-sex spouses in states where same-sex marriage is legal.
Well, they've got a proposal to totally welcome
Yeah.
gay people entirely, but that can't come up to their convention, that part of it, that whole big part of it.
For about 2 years?
Till 2016.
Yeah. In New York, a strange decision by a district court federal judge. A woman who's an employee of a Catholic hospital is married to another woman, and when the Windsor case was decided, striking down federal non-recognition of marriage, a lot changed about the federal insurance program, ERISA, which companies had used in the past like in Massachusetts when marriage became legal, and gay people went to their employers and said, okay, now I'm married, I want my spouse on the company insurance policy. And the companies would say, oh no, we have a federal insurance policy, or an ERISA policy, and the federal government does not recognize your marriage, so we're not including you.
But now they do, and?
Now they do, and this woman went to her employer and asked for her spouse to be included, and her employer is a Catholic hospital. And they said, oh, we very clearly state in our employment contract that same-sex spouses or domestic partners are excluded from coverage.
Well, you know, some of these Catholic hospitals are self-insured and they've been getting away with
Yes,
this.
and that's an ERISA
and the fact
policy.
that this judge is letting them get away with
Yes.
this is an outrage.
Yes.
And I think they should have sued under this New York State law covering non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, and I think they were ill-advised.
Well, if the hospital has a federal insurance system, then
And the federal insurance system is not discriminating, then the only basis on which they're discriminating is they don't like gay people.
Right.
And there is a law against that in New York State. And it does not totally exempt religious institutions.
We can go around in circles
All
about
right.
this, but
Makes me
I'm
damn
just
mad.
telling you what the court decided.
Yeah, I think it's a bad decision. I hope they appeal.
Let's cheer up Andy a little
Oh.
by running the new same-sex marriage commercial from the state of Oklahoma, where, as you know, a judge invalidated the anti-same-sex marriage law, but that's now on appeal to the 10th Circuit in Denver.
So this ad features a retired Army colonel with a lesbian daughter. We have that.
Here in Oklahoma, we value family. When Deidre told me she was gay as her dad, I was worried because I wanted to protect her. When Deidre met Amber, I realized that she could have a family. Only marriage means the ability to take care of your family.
Why shouldn't they know the love we've had all these years?
As a veteran, I know freedom means freedom for everyone, and no family should be denied a basic freedom.
Marriage enhances our community and makes families stronger.
Sounds like he was quoting Dick Cheney. Freedom means freedom for everybody.
Exactly.
Right.
In June, on June 6th, opening in a theater near you, The Case Against 8, the movie version of the Prop 8 case fight in California. This, just as we've been telling you about the book that's been written by New York Times reporter Joe Becker about the Prop 8 case that is so controversial because she compared Chad Griffin, or analogized Chad Griffin, to Rosa Parks and acted like the whole same-sex marriage movement had started with his entry into it in 2008. So the Olsen and Boyce and Chad had brought in a filming team at the same time as they gave access to Joe Becker. So this will be the video version of
Chad
the
Griffin
book.
was a publicist, so
He did a great
It
job.
was all about. I mean, I remember.
Even if he didn't win his case the way he wanted
I remember
to.
watching them on the steps of the Supreme Court, all smiles after not winning their case, and having it punted back and just basically,
Well,
sent
they
back.
won
Well, yes,
the right to marry
It allowed
in
people to get in
California.
California married again,
Yeah.
but it was not the great victory they wanted. But clearly, they were posing for the cameras in the sense
Sure.
of for this film.
Why not?
Well, because it distorts the story of what happened.
Well, hey, when I was prosecuted for lying silently in the middle aisle at St. Patrick's Cathedral,
I seem to remember that.
The St. Patrick's 6 case,
Yes.
where we were on trial for quite a while and
Well,
on
you were
court
prosecuted
TV.
by Dan Rather's son.
Exactly, and convicted on
Yes.
several counts.
You were guilty.
Yes, well, yes and no. I could
mean,
go
legally,
around in circles.
legally.
Yes and no. I could
Okay.
go around in circles with you on that too. Nonetheless, the judge who had fought us all the way through the trial said, as she was pronouncing sentence and convicting us, said, you know, you all went out to do civil disobedience, but even people who do civil disobedience pay a price. Even Gandhi and Martin Luther King pay a price for doing civil disobedience. So we went out to the front steps of the courthouse and held a press conference. And I started it off by saying, the judge compared us to Gandhi and Martin Luther King.
Very good.
See?
On the money.
You can do that.
Well, speaking of course, the other case that we did win in the Supreme Court was the Windsor case. Robbie Kaplan, who argued that case, said this week that we were told to de-gay the case. But she said that nothing was going to change the fact that the plaintiff was already married and already gay.
And that was the point of the
Windsor.
case.
And then there's another controversy involving Robbie Kaplan because she wanted to get into the Ohio case in the Sixth Circuit. And the ACLU, who she worked on the Windsor case, says it's too late and we don't want her in the case now. She does want to raise other issues that they're not raising in the case.
They say they have already raised the issues she's raising. Now that may just be their reason, you know, their excuse for not having her join in.
Yes.
You know, there are a lot of territorial concerns, but when you've worked on something for a long time, you may not want someone.
Who used to say everyone wants to get into the act? Jimmy Durante or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody wants to get into the act.
Well,
they want to be there when the Supreme Court case is argued that will make it a 50-state.
Well, that's what Olson and Boyce are doing in Virginia. That's their whole thing. And they're fighting territorially with Lambda and the ACLU there about who's in which cases and what gets appealed where.
Right.
But Bishop Gene Robinson wants to get out of the case. He and his husband, Mark Andrew, are divorcing. They have been together all together for 25 years, married a few years ago.
Yeah. He said the decision was made after much counseling. My belief in marriage is undiminished by divorcing someone I have loved for a very long time and will continue to love. Love can endure even if a marriage cannot. That's true sometimes.
Okay. We finished with marriage news?
Not entirely.
Okay.
Well, I mean, in Indiana, a judge could rule on the suit there next week. And Republican voters there in Indiana ousted 2 legislators, Republicans, who helped keep same-sex marriage in the Constitution off the ballot. Tea Party candidates beat them in Northeast Indiana. So there was some price to pay there for interfering with the right wing. And then there's the Maggie Gallagher story. You know, she wrote a long column basically saying, look, you know, face it, on the marriage thing, we have to face the fact that we have lost this the way we have fought it.
I can't imagine that came as a big headline to any of her colleagues.
But then she asks a more fundamental question, which is I think the one we're going to litigate for the next 10 years or something,
if
or
they have it their way.
maybe 1,000 years. She asks whether Orthodox Christianity and some other traditional faiths will be, quote, stigmatized and marginalized as the equivalent of racism in the American public square. One can only hope. Will biblical morality be wiped out as an acceptable public position in America? If you believe that gay people are evil, yes, we do want to stigmatize that belief. It is an evil belief.
A lot of people use the Bible as a basis for racism.
But give her some credit. She also accuses Christian conservatives, quote, of doing politics stupidly and on the cheap, and says that's why they lost in Arizona. In other words, you can't just like huff and puff and say we're right. You've got to do politics right. Learn from the Koch brothers.
I wish she'd admit that their principles are wrong, let alone their tactics.
Please. And then there's Oregon, by the way, where LGBT activists fighting the petition campaign to put Religious Freedom Initiative on the ballot that singles us out. It specifically mentions gay weddings and things like that in this initiative. The other side needs about 88,000 signatures, and that means they have to get a lot more by July the 3rd. Our side is running TV ads trying to counter that somehow. I don't think you can stop it.
Well,
88,000 signatures, or 100 and even 160. That's pretty easy to get.
for all our advances, we are still fighting the same battle, which is for us not to be stigmatized. Maggie Gallagher and the Christian right can talk all they want about being stigmatized, but the real people who are stigmatized in this battle are us.
Right.
You know, the whole reason we're having this battle is because we are defined by them as second-class citizens at best, illegitimate human beings at worst. So, and this fight about public accommodations or public policy or whatever is still all over whether we are legitimate human beings. And that's the fight we're going to continue to have.
Senator Chuck Schumer once came up to me at an event I was covering, and he started screaming at me. He was a big opponent of same-sex marriage, and I said, he said, that story you wrote about me was not fair. You know, you didn't tell people all my record. I'm supportive of gay. I said, calm down, Chuck. I said, I'm the one who's not allowed to get married.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, you're right. I said, yes, I'm right. You know, you're not going to get a break from me if you're going to oppose my basic rights.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that conversation turned him around.
Well, not right away.
Kirsten Gillibrand becoming
Yes.
the junior senator and coming out for same-sex marriage is what turned him around.
Yes. All right.
All right, let's move on to employment discrimination. We have this extremely flawed proposed Employment Non-Discrimination Act in Congress, having passed the Senate and not going very far in the House. More on what's wrong with it in a second, but it has a lot of Democratic support, almost unanimous, I guess, but they've been trying to pick off a few Republican supporters to get it to pass the House. John Boehner has said he won't bring it up. I say thank God.
Yes.
But Representative Ileana Ros-Lehtinen of Florida, who is the one big pro-gay Republican in the House, announced this week that she will not sign on to a proposed discharge petition in the House, which would force it to come up for a vote if they could get enough signatures, half the House plus one, indicating that it could pass. And she will not do that because she says it's not a bipartisan effort. It's really just a partisan effort with a few Republicans tacked on.
And it's a bad bill.
Well, it is a bad bill.
In Texas, a woman in Dallas said she was denied shelter by the Salvation Army because she is transgender. She was trying to move from an emergency shelter to a transitional shelter run by the Salvation Army. And they said she'd have to go through sex reassignment surgery to qualify. The woman, Jody Lynn Wiley, now is now working with the Trans Pride Initiative to create the Dallas Trans Shared Housing Project to aid trans people with finding shelter.
None of which would be covered, of course, by the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, because what we need is a broader bill that covers housing and shelter and public accommodations and employment. And so Andy and a few others were outside the GLAAD Media Awards this last weekend at the Waldorf Astoria, handing out educational flyers to the attendees, as we will do at other major events coming up, to educate people about why the proposed ENDA is not enough, because it doesn't cover all these other things, and is actually a step backwards because it has too broad a religious exemption.
Well, Ken Kidd did get a flyer into the hands of Perez Hilton, so that ought to put us over the top. But I think we need to focus on getting, I joined in because these are my friends, but getting organizations to sign on to an inclusive
well, a lot
LGBT
of them have.
rights bill.
A lot of them have, and
Yes.
if you go to equalitypledge.org, I didn't give that to the control room, but that should be easy to remember. That is the national effort to sign on, and there are a lot of organizations and individuals signed on, and Queer Nation is about to start working with them. And if you want more information on what Queer Nation is doing, these pickets and informational leafletings, you can go to queernationni.org for information about that. And the Human Rights Campaign, which is pushing the current version of ENDA very hard, put out a new report this week on employment discrimination and said, according to their survey, 53% of LGBT people are closeted on the job, and that it's because they feel unsafe and intimidated, and as I say, not willing to be part of the minority.
I'm having trouble getting some people in the new de Blasio administration to answer the question about, I said, some people are saying you're gay, I want you to be able to say it yourself, and they're not responding. So, I wouldn't want to write it.
It's the old story.
Well,
it's the ick factor.
Well,
we're icky.
Meanwhile, we are making progress in becoming a Christian nation. The Supreme Court ruled that even though an upstate town only does Christian prayers at their government meetings, that's just fine. It's part of the tradition of the country. This is from Justice Anthony Kennedy, who's supposed to be our big hero.
My Constitution says the government shall not establish religion.
It's outrage. It was an absolute outrage.
Terrible.
They're very funny on these things. They have ruled against it in some school things and stuff like that.
Yeah, their decision was basically, it's not such a big deal. That's their constitutional analysis.
Right.
Not such a big deal.
Well, let me do this Pasadena Community College story.
Okay.
We talked to you about how the college dumped their alumnus, Dustin Lance Black, as a commencement speaker because someone leaked private photos of him having sex. This was as an aggressive act against him. So this week they apologized to him.
An ex-lover put these pictures
it was friends of the ex-lover.
Friends of the even more so.
So this week they apologized to him and they re-invited him. We don't know what's happened with that. So the person invited to replace him as the commencement speaker was the city's public health director, Eric Walsh. Turns out he's a Seventh-day Adventist preacher who is a reverend and said in sermons that evolution is a religion created by Satan, compared the Disney company to a dark empire of superstition and witchcraft, and attacked homosexuality in various ways. He, in this sermon, said that when they changed the DSM-3, the Index of Mental Disorders in 1973, this was done by people to get rid of homosexuality.
As a mental disorder.
Yes. This was done by people who claimed to be psychiatrists and scientists.
Masquerading.
But were raised up by the enemy who war against the principles of God. Now, this is supposed to be the health commissioner. He also said AIDS in Africa, in Kenya, the rates did not go down because of condoms. They didn't use condoms in Uganda. This is a lie. He said God's plan. If God's plan had been followed, we wouldn't have an AIDS crisis. He referred to Betty Friedman, meaning Friedan, as the devil, as a devil. I mean, this just goes on and on and on and on. So he has been suspended as health commissioner. But did they disinvite him to speak at Pasadena College? No, he said he had a scheduling conflict.
He withdrew.
The story just.
It doesn't increase your respect for Pasadena City College.
Well, we'll see if Dustin Lance Black ends up there.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. In Washington State, the governor has appointed to their state Supreme Court the first out lesbian, Asian, and Latina woman.
Mary Yu.
She is very highly regarded.
Appointed by Governor Jay Inslee. She's 57 and had been a trial court judge for 14 years. She once worked as director, get this, of Peace and Social Justice Office of the Archdiocese of Chicago. I don't imagine she was working for gay rights then.
I think she's gotten over it.
Okay.
The U.S. Senate
Well,
has...
I mean, that's not saying that they're not for some good things.
A lot of good work is done in the name of religion,
Yes.
as I like to say. The U.S. Senate has confirmed Michelle Friedland to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, finally filling out the bench there.
51-40.
Yeah.
51-40.
She is straight, but she represented Equality California in their marriage cases in California.
She sounds like she could have been a Republican. She clerked for Sandra Day O'Connor and worked for Ted Olson's firm. But she only got one Republican vote because she supported same-sex marriage.
But that's true of everybody in the Senate these days.
Terrible.
Toyota has moved 4 of its units from California, New York, Kentucky to Texas. And, you know, they're consolidating, they're saving money, blah, blah, blah. But gay employees in those units are going to be moving from California and New York to Texas. This is a real issue for a lot of people in their employment.
Sure. In Ohio, a judge ordered the state to permanently resume hormone therapy for a transgender inmate. The treatment was denied since she was locked up in 2012, but Whitey Lee sued them.
And
That's
in
the person.
Connecticut, a 16-year-old transgender girl was in state foster care, and she was being harassed by other kids and staff in foster care. She was being physically and mentally abused, so they incarcerated her. They hauled her off to prison. She's in solitary confinement in an adult prison on the grounds that she is a danger to herself or others.
Can't we give them some good news? Greenville, Mississippi became the 5th city to add LGBT inclusive resolution to the non-discrimination ordinance there. What was the 4th? Oh, Magnolia, Mississippi was the 4th just last week.
And now we have a 6th. Bay St. Louis this week became the 6th.
Okay. And Seattle, the Boy Scouts are going to boot a gay Eagle Scout, Liam Easton Calabria. This is not Eastern Calabria, but that's his last name, Easton Calabria. But not his twin brother, August, who is not gay.
All right.
Liam wants to see his children in scouting with him as a leader someday. Neither his brother or his father talked about leaving the Scouts over this discrimination, but there it is.
In New Hampshire, the Senate passed a sexual orientation non-discrimination state constitutional amendment.
It's the first one in the country.
Yeah, it's been killed in the House.
Oh, well, they did it in South Africa, folks.
Yeah, well, not here yet.
Well, it's pretty Republican up there in the House, although they're libertarian, aren't they? Well, of course, if they're libertarian, they don't really like civil rights laws.
Let's hopscotch a few headlines as we have time
here.
getting short. Newsweek did a major story following up on former ex-gays that was quite good. Truth wins out, and Wayne Besson have opened a new arm called the Center Against Religious Extremism, with a big matching grant from Henry Van Amering, and they're going to fight Scott Lively spreading hate worldwide. The Williams Institute has put out a new report, The Sexual Victimization of Men in America. New data challenge old assumptions, published in the American Journal of Public Health, talking about how widespread that is, as opposed to what people think. And a brand new, enormous resource book, Trans Bodies, Trans Selves, put out by Oxford University Press.
Like Our Bodies, Ourselves for women.
Exactly. 672 pages. 200 plus contributors, social history, gender politics, health, law, relationships. It's an encyclopedia, and they're going to keep updating it with more things. Trans Bodies, Trans Selves.
All right.
New news that the state marriage votes in 2012, Maryland, Minnesota, Maine, brought a lot more people out to vote for Obama. Really may have helped get him reelected in 2012. Surprise.
Whereas they used to attribute George Bush's election to, I don't think it was
the
true. I don't think it was true to the
anti-same-sex
anti-same-sex marriage.
in 2004.
Yep.
There's a new zine out for black gay men called The 10th. If you go to the10thzine.com, you can take a look at that. What else? Michael Sam in the NFL draft the end of this week. Things looking a little dicey. He may or may not get drafted because he's considered not big enough, not fast enough, even though he was the star defensive player.
In the division.
In the SEC, yeah.
All
All
right.
right. We got that. All
Okay.
right. Now let's move on.
International, I guess we should start in Uganda, where they're having we have a picture of these guys. They're having the first trial under the new anti-gay law. 2 men were charged with, we have the picture there of these guys, acts against the order of nature.
There they are.
That's Jackson Mukasa on the left and Kim Mukisa on the right. This is in Kampala. They fled an angry mob in January and then got arrested. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry likened the law there to the anti-Jewish laws in Nazi Germany. And then President Museveni was hosted by the Foreign Office in Britain.
And a big gay leader from Uganda, the head of the group Spectrum LGBT, John Abdallah Wambere, has come to the U.S. and applied for asylum here. But strangely, there's another story this week that LGBT refugees from Congo, Rwanda, and Burundi go to Uganda to seek asylum, although now, since the passage of the law, they have to be quiet about it.
It's just
It's
unbelievable
crazy.
how bad it is.
But
over
if you
there.
want to talk about Nazi-ish laws, what about Russia and Putin and no swearing in any media, no, shutting down the internet? He is getting worse and worse every day.
Well, maybe if he doesn't bend, it will break. I can't believe they'll put up with that forever.
Yeah. And of course, the stories about what's going on with the girls who've been kidnapped in Nigeria.
Horrible.
And, we'd like some action about their big new anti-gay law, too.
Good luck, Jonathan, the president there. And then, of course, there was the Vatican this week fighting off at a torture conference any mention of their own responsibility for the torture of children in the sex abuse scandal. But it did come up. They did bring it up, even though they were warned not to by the Vatican. The Vatican is also continuing its crackdown on U.S. nuns. So much for liberal Saint Francis. I was going to say Pope Francis.
He'll be St. Francis eventually.
Eventually.
But they are going to have in October their conference on social issues. That is the next step in their process of surveying the people.
Yes.
We'll see what happens there. And same-sex marriage got defeated again in the North Ireland legislature. There may be a lawsuit about that. And the one good news from Russia in St. Petersburg, 300 LGBT people marched as a contingent in the May 1st annual march. But Nikolai Alexeyev says, very nice, but don't expect that to turn into anything good ultimately.
Okay.
AIDS news. The big news is from Iowa, where the legislature unanimously passed an amended law on the criminalization of people with HIV who have sex.
Well, they had a very draconian law there
Yes.
on HIV transmission, or really just having sex. So now if someone intends to transmit and does transmit, then it's a Class B felony. But if there's no intent, it's no transmission, it's still a Class D felony. No intent of transmission, it's a Class D. So it's, but they've apparently added some other diseases in the mix here about what can be classified.
Take a broader view of what's dangerous.
Yeah, I think anybody who's sick with anything should be careful about not giving it to anybody else, even if you got a cold.
Then there's the question, but then people are sick, are careful. A lot of this, the impetus for the passage of this law was the case of Nick Rhodes, who got 25 years in prison.
Outrageous.
He had undetectable virus, he used a condom, and he did not transmit it.
And now that people are undetectable and all these kinds of things, they've got to look at all these ridiculous laws again. But in Canada, Sarah Schulman has a piece in Slate saying Canada is in the top 10 countries in the world for arrests and prosecution of HIV-positive people per capita. It is illegal for HIV-positive people to have sex without disclosing, even if they use condoms, and no one gets infected. AIDS Action Now, an activist group there, is running a Think Twice campaign aimed at those using the laws with their partner versus their partners. Oh, versus their partners. If you're thinking of like going after your partner, think about what you're doing, especially if you didn't get infected or anything, because don't bring the police into it.
Well, there's going to be a big national conference in June at Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa.
I've been.
Lucky for you. On HIV criminalization. If you go to the website hivisnotacrime.com, you can get information about this conference June 2nd through 6th. This is all about the Zero Project and Sean Strub and activists on this issue around the country. 2/3 of the states in the United States have HIV-specific criminalization laws.
New York State's got a bill to ban using condoms as evidence against sex workers because it discourages people, especially in the trans community, from using condoms at all. And because if they're carrying them around, they often get arrested for prostitution and things like that. So I hope that bill passes.
Let's move on to
entertainment.
Yes. Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick are going to do a revival of a Terrence McNally play. It's Only a Play, probably in September, a showbiz comedy which Terrence is updating and rewriting.
I don't know that one. But Terrence has been writing plays for 50 years.
Yeah.
He's got written plays on Broadway for 50 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big controversy this week, briefly, HGTV had hired these brothers, David and Jason Benham, to do a show called Flip It Forward that was about house flipping. But it turns out they are the sons of the virulently activist homophobe Flip Benham.
Oh, you can't blame them, can you?
No, because they're homophobic too. At least one of them was involved in all this. Yeah.
All right.
So
sins of the father or mother
are visited on the sons. They've been protesting abortion, Muslims, Democrats. They interrupted
sounds like the Republican National Platform.
Well, here's something that sounds like me. They interrupted a Gene Robinson sermon, calling him a sodomite Episcopalian bishop. I didn't do anything like that. They said that God visited the 9/11 attack on us to punish us for abortion. You know, they're really on the edge. So HGTV was confronted with all of this, and they've decided not to go ahead with the show.
Okay.
Well, you know, again, the debate.
Congratulations to our friends at Fun Home, the musical, which is based on Alison Bechdel's graphic novel of growing up lesbian in a funeral home.
With a gay closeted father.
Won the best musical from the New York Drama Critics Circle, which takes it. That takes it off Broadway. If you're watching the Tony Awards, you're not going to see it this year because it hasn't been on Broadway yet.
But it's expected to be in the fall, and then we'll talk about the Tonys.
And another show that's closed, I got a picture of it here, but maybe coming to a regional theater near you is Eric Kobel's The Velocity of Autumn, about an old woman, Tony nominated this year, Estelle Parsons, threatening to blow up her Park Slope brownstone because some of her kids want to put her in a home. So another son, played by Steven Spinella there, who's gay and plays a gay character here, climbs a tree and gets into her barricaded room, and they embark on an hour and a half of argument, recriminations, and keen ruminations of age. It's a lot about aging. I hope it has a new life.
And what did you think of Cabaret?
You know, I had never seen this Alan Cumming interpretation of the, and look, it's a great show. Cabaret, and it's done at the Kit Kat Club at Studio 54 there. Michelle Williams as Sally Bowles takes some getting used to, but Alan is terrific. And this is Rob Marshall staging, and that's great. But it's becoming, it made me feel it's becoming harder and harder to really be transgressive and lewd in our time, because they really try to play all those aspects of it up.
And it's just not, we're too used to it, or
yeah,
what?
I mean, I just don't think that we're shocked by this stuff anymore. That's the thing.
I
think
see.
they're trying really hard to do that. So Here Lies Love. This is.
That was pretty shocking, wasn't it?
Well, it's the David Byrne Fatboy Slim musical about Ferdinand and mainly Imelda Marcos and Philippine politics of 30 to 50 years ago. You go there, you're going to stand through the whole thing, 90 minutes, and they keep moving the stage around, so you got to keep moving. But here's it's very lively and kind of.
Well, you're supposed to dance through the whole thing, aren't you?
Oh, I learned the Philippine dance. I showed it to my friend Jed, whose ancestry is that. He says, oh yeah, that's the dance. But you're sort of the audience for them. You're sort of being lured into cheering for them. Mm-hmm. And that made me a little uncomfortable since they were monsters. Although I know.
Could you protest?
It's a free country, but I didn't start booing them. I might have gotten shot. There was a lot of shooting going on.
That would have been a little too much verisimilitude.
We've got a shot of Playing with Grown-Ups there by Hannah Patterson at Brits Off Broadway at 59 East 59th. This takes on a woman who's become a mother late in life, and her deep ambivalence about motherhood. a nice show for Mother's Day this weekend, huh?
Don't you remember the Dear Abby or Ann Landers column where she asked her readers whether they would, how they felt about being mothers? Would they have kids again if
Really?
they had a chance?
No.
And half of them said no.
Wow. Well, look, I think the scenes about that part of it are pretty powerful, but the lead up is mostly about dinner between two couples. They're all mostly in academia, and it's a lot of stuff about academia that we all know, and that kind of slowed it down a little bit. But Alan Cox is in it, and he's great. You may know him as the son of. And I saw a revival of the Rivals at the Pearl Theater.
You'll go see anything.
My friend George Weinberg, who wrote Society and the Healthy Homosexual, really wanted to see this. He likes the classics, so we went. And it's a real, creditable, faithful revival. It's the Sheridan classic, featuring a lot of the veterans.
Before my time.
A lot of the Pearl Company veterans did this in 2003, but this time they let them play other roles. So they really know the show.
Yeah.
This is with Mrs. Malaprop. And the guy I want to give credit to in this show, because he gives it a big lift, is Dan Daly. He plays Sir Anthony Absolute.
The old Dan Daly?
It's not the old Dan Daly that we know from the movies. This is through May 25th at the Pearl Theater Company.
All right, so I want to tell you about something that I stumbled on last week. Are you familiar with Billy?
I'm done.
Billy on the Street? Well, we have time, so I'm going to tell you about this.
Billy on the Street, yeah, I saw it once. Kind of weird and
hilarious
off-putting.
to me. Well, it's either off-putting or hilarious, depending on your mood at the moment.
He goes up and interviews people on the street, right?
That would be the mild version. He goes up and yells at people on the street, sort of interview, sort of quizzes them. He does quizzes now. He describes it as a game show.
He's a little agitated.
Very. He's. It's on the Fuse network. Yeah. It's on the shows air originally on Wednesday nights at 11 and 11:30 and
HBO.
No, Fuse.
Fuse network.
Fuse.
That's Fuse network, folks.
It's done under the Funny or Die
yes.
Headline. So if you're looking for it on your TV guide, look up Funny or Die, Billy on the Street.
All right.
His name is Billy Eichner. He's a gay guy. And
he's gay.
Yes. And he must live in our neighborhood because he shoots all this in our neighborhood. And
but that's where all the wacky people are.
Exactly.
Not
and
really
the
anymore.
people available for wackiness. So it's him and a crew and his microphone, and he's generally running down the sidewalk and accosting people, and he'll stop them and he'll say, "For $1. Who do you like? Or should Sarah Jessica Parker change her hair? For $1, or who's sexier,
What
this
does that
one or that
mean?
one? Nothing. That's the point. That's the point.
Did he get you?
It's hilarious. No. He did the Meryl Streep merry-go-round last week where he had about 6 different women dressed up in different roles that Meryl Streep had done and had them going through an obstacle course in a playground. With all sorts of,
You like
cute
this
stuff.
show.
It makes me laugh. But
Good.
here's what really got to me last week. He did a quiz called Queen Latifah or Brave Person. And so he does this rapid fire thing. He stops someone on the street and he says, "All right, we're gonna do this quiz, and I'm gonna give a phrase describing someone, and you tell me whether it describes Queen Latifah or a brave person." And they sort of go, "Okay, I don't know, but okay." So he starts this out with things like, ran for supervisor of San Francisco as the first out gay person and got assassinated. Brave person. Does a meaningless talk show on network TV. Queen Latifah. And he gets about, started the AIDS Coalition to unleash power, act up. Brave person.
Well, she is incredibly not brave.
Exactly.
I realize that she's a woman of color and she's got a tougher time coming out than others.
Oh, tell it to Robin Roberts.
But I think it is incredibly boring. Her show.
Oh, it's
I stumble
useless.
upon it sometimes. She's got a good guest, and she
can't.
does an incredibly boring interview.
It's because she's inauthentic.
Right, exactly.
And I thought it was so subversive of him. It took me a couple of questions to catch on to the fact that this was the whole point of the game.
You're not a kid anymore,
No, but I've certainly outed Queen Latifah enough on this show.
We don't out, we report.
We do. But the idea that he would take this format to use it as a device to out Queen Latifah and condemn her as a coward was just fascinating and wonderful. Now, meanwhile, the kicker and footnote to this whole thing, and by the way, I've tried to find it on his website online, and he hasn't posted that particular bit yet. He's posted a lot of other stuff. You can while away a lot of time watching Billy on the Street online. Queen Latifah is going to star as Bessie Smith, lesbian.
Brave person.
Brave person in a, as Dustin Lance Black would say, biopic. I heard him say that once. Yes.
It's a biopic
for
Dustin.
HBO.
Maybe you shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be the commencement speaker at Pasadena City College.
And it's being,
no, you should be. I'm just kidding.
This Queen Latifah's Bessie Smith is being directed by Dee Reese, who we had sitting right here a couple of years ago, who directed the movie Pariah,
which was wonderful.
Wonderful
and
little
what's she
independent
picking on Queen? Maybe she's helped. Maybe it's all part of the process.
This is Queen Latifah's long-term.
Because Queen Latifah sees how out lesbians do, like Ellen, who have higher Q scores than she does.
Well, that would be lovely to
and
think
Q does
about.
not refer to queer or anything like that. I don't know what it refers to, quality, but it means that you're well loved.
Exactly. Well, since she has denied being a lesbian in the past, I don't know that she has a long-term
Maybe she's bisexual. Maybe
Fine.
she's got her fingers crossed behind her back when she says she's not a lesbian.
Well, how do we feel? I'll get off Queen Latifah for the moment, but we do have
some of our viewers don't like when we talk like this, but we're just trying to be fair.
Trying to be
honest.
But
well, some viewer wrote to me this week and said, everybody has to do this in their own time, and you should never, talk about them unless they want to be talked about. But they're public figures, and she has lived, she has walked around with her partner at events and things like that. So the question is not, Queen Latifah or Brave, but who's this woman you're with?
Well, and she's been asked that. And our insistence on public figures being out is because they send the wrong message when they're not.
Right.
And you take on that extra burden. When you acquire the fame, the riches, the perks that come with being famous, you also shoulder an extra burden.
And let me put it this way.
Legally.
Given how we do report regularly, the news media reports on so-and-so's having an affair, so-and-so got married or got divorced or whatever, this is all part of people's personal lives, but we do report them. And if we do it for heterosexuals, gay people are going to have to deal with it too, and most of them are starting to realize that.
And just to close this, what about Monica Lewinsky and her reference to Tyler Clementi as...
well, she thought about committing suicide a lot when she was under all that pressure, and she's got a new article in Vanity Fair, which I hear that the Clintons have authorized. That's what they're saying on the news, to get it out of the way before Hillary runs for president.
Yes.
With their friends at Vanity Fair. But Monica said, look, Tyler Clementi was, when she saw what happened to him, it made her pull back from the brink.
Exactly. So good for her on that. And we hope nothing but success and happiness for Queen Latifah and honesty. And we will see you next week.